I don't know, it became conscious to these people that, hey, these guys speak the same language, they fight. Break that up. So they broke us up, took the kids away, separated them, right?
You're live.
Brought us in from the Caribbean, mixed us around, shipped us all over, right? So we've never actually been in the same place here at the same time, right? So the consciousness is coming, but it's coming in spurts and bursts and spurts from different areas and with different focuses, right? So there's no real general focus, and the different groups are representing different schools of thought. I'm not upset with that, but when I say the term, right, the term causes confusion, because to us here in America, when we say African, we mean black. That's it. We don't mean nothing else. We don't mean no other ethnic group. We don't mean no Arabs in the north. We don't mean no white people in the south. We don't mean no Indians in the east. We don't mean no mixed Berbers in the northwest. We mean the black people when we say African. But that's not what African mean to people on the continent of Africa.
I disagree.
Why you disagree, Brother Jabari?
Well, I would have to say, first of all, I should say I find your analysis interesting, right? So I want to be clear, I'm disagreeing with something you said, not with everything you said, right? Your analysis is interesting and erudite. I enjoy it. The part that I disagree with is what people on the continent take to mean Africa. You know, Anika and I have traveled extensively on the continent, and I think that most people on the continent believe that the term African relates to those people who have been there beyond, who were there in ancient history. So it is rare that you will find an Arab that says they're an African. It's rare. You find it. We travel to Egypt. This year will be our 14th trip. There are some Arabs that say, well, we're not Arabs. In fact, it's interesting that we have this debate with people in Egypt all the time. We say, well, you're the Arab. And they go, no, we're not the Arab. I say, well, what are you? Occasionally they'll say we're Africans. Very rare. What they will say is they'll say we're Egyptians. And I go, well, what does that mean? And I think they're playing with semantics. And I have to remind them that the name for Egypt is the Arab Republic of Egypt. And then they back up a little bit. And the reason why they get themselves in that awkward place is most people don't want to acknowledge that they are on the continent of Africa. So from my experience, and I can't say that I can speak for all of the countries on the continent and all the peoples on the continent, but I can say that for the most part, people who say they are African are those people that we consider the quote-unquote black Africans. And there's even some disagreement among those people as to whether they're African. But I'm talking about in terms of the sort of the swaths of people on the continent, most people would agree that they're Africans. And one of the reasons why I think that we at this point need to use the term, even though I agree that it has some weaknesses, that it has some failings, is that we are talking about uniting not just people in Harlem, not just people in the Harlems of the United States or the Harlems of the West, but we're also talking about people globally. Because the thing that we don't get, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about us. The thing that we don't get is that when you look at the Chinese who are coming into power, they are actually in many ways, and I'm going to use peacefully in air quotes at this point, because it really is in air quotes, they are peacefully taking over the continent of Africa. But we look at what the Chinese are doing, we look at what the Indians are doing, we look at what large groups of people who are beginning to actually assert themselves are doing. One of the reasons why they're able to do that is because they are feeling the weight of their numbers. And I think that we have not gotten to the point where we recognize that there are over 1 billion Africans on the planet. So when we talk about that large sum of people that can actually move global politics because of their sheer numbers, if Africans understood who we were, we would be able to do the same. In fact, I think we might be able to do it even more effectively than the Chinese or the Indians, because we have now become ingrained in every continent of the world. We have to be able to feel our power, to use our power, and then truly find ways to shift the global dialogue so that it benefits our people. So that's the reason why at this point I'd say that we're Africans. But I do agree that there will probably need to be a time where there's greater research into the term, because we're not exactly sure what its origins are. There's some good arguments, but we have no definitive proof of what its complete origins are. And I also believe that it may be helpful for us to also develop a term that is akin to black. That's an intermediate term. Because there are some people who have not come into full consciousness of who they are, who are not prepared to hear African, but are prepared to hear black. And so we have to find a way to unify with them, and then, as we move as a global people, decide what we're going to be called. You wanted to respond, or? Yes, brother.
I'm in almost total agreement with you.
Right.
Right? We're on the same frequency.
Right.
I often observe that Chinese people are Chinese everywhere. And we're different everywhere. And part of my problem with air quotes African is because we're African everywhere, we're different.
Say that part again. Let me see, make sure I get that one. You might be saying something.
Everywhere that we are, we're different.
Right.
Have a different name.
Right.
We're Jamaicans, Trinidadians, what have you, right? But we're also Africans.
Right.
But we're not looking at that like we're the same. Because we're speaking European languages, whether it's African French or African and English, right? And our brothers and sisters on the continent that don't speak English and French don't call themselves that. Because there is no native word for African on that continent. Now,
Our brothers that don't speak English and French don't call themselves
African. No, this is what I'm saying to you, brother, is that this is a foreign term, right? And it has been applied, okay? And
Do we know that definitively?
yeah, because
if we know
we
that
can go back to 195 BC.
Sure.
There was a guy named Terentius Afer, right? Taken to Rome, was a poet and a playwright. He was from the Afar people. Now, it's my opinion that is a alteration, a corruption of the Afar people, because Terentius Afer, A-F-E-R, is actually A-F-A-R. Those people live in Djibouti right now. They 30% of the population. Okay, so that's the only people on that continent with that name, and they had early contact with those Romans. Now we know that there was a Roman province called Africa in 202 BC. That's where Hannibal lost in Zama, okay, to the Roman general who was surnamed Africanus in honor of his defeat in Hannibal in that province. So it didn't come from the Romans. It was already there. It was a province, a Carthaginian province, right? And we know the Afar people.
The Afar people don't live in the Carthaginian.
No, they were chased out of the north.
But what I'm saying to you is
Pass the mic, let him help.
this is correct. First, sometimes when you're debating, you have to first say, I agree with what you said, right? I'm trying to build on what you said. I actually agree with everything you just said. All of those bits of history that point to what could be a history or a beginning of the term seem to also imply that there was a larger usage that we're still unaware of. And so it says to me that there may have been another period where that term was used. Now I don't think we have any definitive proof of it.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we know when it came into common uses, because it comes into common uses with maps.
Are you sure?
When they started navigating. Because
are you sure?
Well, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. In order to have a full comprehension of historical reality, right? You just need to have a comprehension of modern reality, how people interact, and how things form, how trends form that turn into cultural phenomena that change cultural and courses of culture. We have these things today. The cell phone did it. TV did it. Radio did it. Changes culture, changes awareness. We know things now that happen on the other side of the world that would have been history to ancient populations. They would have heard about something that happened in China maybe 10 years later when a traveler passed through.
Possibly longer. Yeah.
You understand? So now it's instantaneous, and it's causing all kind of confusion around the world.
Yes, but how does that get to us not knowing? This is
Now-
okay. Here's my point. I think that
Sometimes I wiggle around, but
there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think that what you're saying is germane to the conversation. It is. That's the reason why I said, where is that? It's germane because we're at a point where when we contrast the ancient world with the modern world, what we find is, yes, information does not travel as seamlessly across continents, across countries, even across communities. That happens very instantaneously now, right? And so what I believe is possible is that we have still not have a full reckoning of what ancient African people considered themselves. And part of that may also be due to the fact that there's been very little archaeological excavation, archaeological research done on the continent. There's some that say that only 30% of all of the monuments, all of the believed archaeological sources in Kemet and in Egypt have been excavated. And if you include that in the work that's been done in Africa, there are those that say that only 5% of all of the archaeological sites in Africa have been excavated. So I honestly believe that there's a lot more that we have to understand. We look at Timbuktu, the great universities that Africans on the West Coast created, that in some ways stood as the basis for European education, as a citadel of learning across the globe.
and Arab slavery.
And most of, yes, that there was a slave market there as well, but most of the documents that come out of that institution have still not been deciphered. So what I'm saying is that I think that there's still little that we know. We don't know the definitive story. At this point, however, so I think that trying to change the name African, trying to come to some agreement on what term we should use, particularly for us in the West, not located on the continent, at this point, is another strategy that will divide us. I think at this point, the majority of people that we might consider African on the globe are familiar with the word, understand its general usage, and that's where we should currently put our energies on. Because we're at a place now, and this is one of the reasons why I have actually been debating some brothers in the Hebrew Israelite community. Because some of my people who have known me as a scholar, as someone who has, taken folks to Kemet with the African Genesis Institute, who has been leading museum tours for over 15 years and wrote a book. And the folks who know me say, why are you debating with those brothers? Some people even say to me, someone actually said to me today, shame on you, Jabari, debate your equals. I get that. People actually say that to me. And I say, you have to understand something. They say that to me. And I say, there are two reasons why I must engage in this debate. The first one is that those brothers who are seeking to do something powerful in our community, I'm not unclear about that, are in the streets talking to the average African, the average black folk in Harlem. I need to be part of that discussion.
Yes.
And the other thing I say is that some of them are confused about the history of our people. And so if I am to be a historian, yes, conflate and they just don't know. They're looking at just myth and stuff that people told them. Yes. And so because of that challenge, listen, I just had this conversation with Zion Lex. He took 4,000 or 5,000 years and smashed it together. And that's how he makes his arguments work. And they're poor. I mean, if he had actually seen my full, I know he was a little upset about how the debate went, because I saw his Facebook page. Yes, I saw your Facebook page. But if he had seen my presentation, that brother might have changed his name and moved someplace else. He'd have been gone. He would have left his family. He'd have been gone. Gaunt. Because the reality is this. We have to challenge people who are not clear that they are African. I'm using that term generally right now.
I'm not mad. Listen,
yeah.
Let me just say this.
Okay.
Right? So you understand, right?
Okay.
I'm not unamenable
Right.
to the term African. What I see though is the psychological effects of saying we're African and having brothers and sisters come here from the continent of Africa And when we engage them, they'll tell us that they're African, right? But they walk past each other like they don't exist if they're not from the same ethnic group. Now, what I'm saying to you is, I talk to brothers and sisters from the continent of Africa, and they say, you American? And I say, how the hell am I American? And they say, you were born here. And I said, well, shit, you got children?
Yeah.
You say, yeah. I say, where were they born? Say, here. I say, they American? They say, no. I said, well, shit, how they not American if I'm American? Right? They say, say, okay, you African. I say, well, no, where are you from? And they say, Ghana. I say, you Ashanti, right? They say, yeah. I said, see, that's why you don't think I'm African, right? He said, what? I said, because your ancestors sold my ancestors. You understand? So, no, you can't see me as you because the psychology is what I'm dealing with. You understand? So now, look at the psychological effects. If Africans are we all, then Africans sold Africans.
Yeah.
Now, no, understand me, sister. If we are Africans, see, we don't make no distinction here. When we say African, we're not talking about Ashantis, Fantis, and Gas and Aways. We're not talking about Yorubas and Igbos and Hausas and Fulanis. We just talking about,
I call myself a diasporic African, and I count everybody in that.
I got you, and that's what I'm saying to you,
That's what
sister. That's what we do.
Yeah.
We are not excluding anybody.
Right.
We are including everybody.
Right.
We are making no ethnic distinctions.
Right.
And what I'm saying to you, sister, is the psychology of that. There are psychological ramifications. Because when you engage people, right, and you press them on truth, what you get is the distance now, right? Because you'll get that, wait a minute. If I'm an African and you are African, then Africans were selling Africans. But the truth of the matter is, right, you had Ashantis selling Fantis. There was the Ashanti-Fanti War. The Fantis got the British and they burned down Kumasi in 1874. They went, got European help. That's how the Ashantis was sticking it to them.
I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying this.
My only point is they don't see themselves the same, and they speak. They're all Akan people.
Watch that right
and speak.
You have black all on you.
And speak the same language.
Yeah, I see it.
Right there.
Right?
Okay.
But they understand you could be half Fanti and half Ashanti.
Yeah.
So they see themselves different. It's us over here displaced.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's not
Yeah.
making no distinctions.
Can I say this? You want to say something?
I guess I'm trying to understand exactly where you're going with this, because the issue isn't the term Africa itself. The issue is what happened to Africans on the continent and who's helping them get past colonialism and their mental concept of who they are as African people and how they relate to us being here in the United States.
Gotcha.
So that's what my concern is. I mean, being a linguist, language is really important to me. But sometimes I think we focus so much on the words itself, but not focus on what actually happens that causes us to have these distant feelings toward each other.
You know, that's my queen, right? Because she took it from another angle. That's exactly where I would go. Because, and let me take it from an ancient analysis I think you'd even agree with. Now, sometimes people, when they look at the fact that I am actually enamored with Kemet, that I practice Kemetic spirituality, sometimes what they do is they don't necessarily understand that as a historian, I recognize those things that are challenges with regard to Kemet. I recognize those things that the Kemetic governmental structure did that I wouldn't agree with. I mean, just because I say that I'm a Kemite and I follow the way of ancient Kemet doesn't mean that I'm not a historian. I don't recognize that there is no perfect nation. There is no perfect society, right? And so that's part of it. But the other part that I would say is that if you look at the history of Kemet, you will also see that we did battle with other people of African descent. You will see that we struggled, that we collaborated and competed with those, the Nubian, those folks that came out of, that in some sense you could say we even came out of, that we, and so we had disagreements with them. Now sometimes you might say, well, why is it that the people in that area that is sometimes called Tasseti, Kush, or sometimes we call generically today Nubia, why were they not more successful against the Kamite? The thing that's instructive is that for most of Kemetic history, the people that we consider Nubians were distinct people who are not unified. That's the reason why Kemet was able to be dominant over them in many ways, in terms of the use of resources and those sorts of things. So Kemet was able to collaborate with some groups that we would consider Nubian, and have disagreements with other groups that we would consider Nubian. But because we don't know history, we just say the Nubians. When if you look carefully, I've had the Tomhu, the Europeans, show me images of Tutankhamen, King Tut, doing battle with Nubians, and they see the Nubians in front of his chariot. And I say, look at the back of his chariot, and you see there's Africans with him too. So what am I trying to say? I am saying that it is absolutely true that Africa, the continent, has a rich assemblage of ethnicities and peoples. But if we are going to become a powerful global people, we are going to
take that psychology.
We're going to have to sublimate in some ways our individual differences and recognize that we must unite under global terms, under continental terms.
Psychology.
Yeah.
And what my point is, we're not even making an attempt to take the psychology.
Yeah.
We're trying to fit into current European economic structures on that continent.
Right.
We're trying to instill European models on the people.
Right.
We're trying to colonialize their ass with blackface.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Which is why you had coup after coup, rebellion after rebellion, got armies running around that continent right now, black people killing up black people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because of this psychology. And they all on the continent.
Right.
And they all calling themselves, you got these fools swearing allegiance to ISIS.
Yeah.
Swearing allegiance to Arabs.
That's right. That's right.
Now, Arabs have been enslaving black people as long as Arabs have been powerful.
Yeah.
And these fools is pledging allegiance to Arabs and killing black people. See,
this is real. And there's some groups. Here's a very cautious, a very dangerous area to tread, Saab, but I'm going to tread with it because my brother and I can have this conversation. There's some groups representing the United States that actually have allied themselves with groups that have enmity for the African. And some groups that I actually admire. You know, some of you have heard some of the comments that folks in the Nation of Islam have made about the enslavement of African people. I remember in the 90s when I was really beginning to run smaller groups, I remember that we were fighting against enslavement in Africa, and I realized that the group that was fighting against us was the Nation of Islam. That was disheartening to me because I held them in great esteem. But there are groups that are working against their own self-interest, and that is the culmination of enslavement and colonialism. And we have to get to a point where we decide a course of action for a worldwide African people, and that's going to be a real challenge.
It was Brother Frederick Douglass that said slaves on one plantation will fight slaves on another plantation about whose master is better.
That's right.
And when you look, I call it transgenerational trauma passed down from that plantation is still very much alive when you see cats talking about Brooklyn,
Yeah.
and Harlem,
Yeah.
and Queens,
Yeah.
and Brooklyn is better cause it's Brooklyn. How is it better for you cause it's Brooklyn?
Right.
And you black.
Right.
And there are areas in Brooklyn where white people chase black people, like the Ku Klux Klan chase black people. But at the same time, you yelling
My experience.
Brooklyn, Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So here I was born in Harlem, right? So I tell people I was born on this island. They built a bunch of stuff around me. Right? I didn't build it.
Yeah, right?
Right? They built it around me.
Yeah.
This is foreign investment.
Yeah.
I understand what's going on,
Yeah.
right? Now, I also understand that they still sell black people in America.
Yeah.
But the black people don't understand that they still sell black people in America. I was just talking to some young brothers in a restaurant. They were at work, right? I had to do some work there, and they were down there saying raps and niggering it up, right? So I said, well, shit, here's a teaching opportunity, right? So I said, well, I thought you were rapping, but you just repeating this guy's lyrics on the song, right? So he said, oh, I try to rap, but I can't. I said, the reason you can't rap is because you're not free. He said, what? I said, you're not free. I said, because you still calling yourself nigga in America.
Yeah.
And niggas were for sale in America on plantations like you sell shoes. So if you still calling yourself what they called you when they sold you, you're still in the store.
Yeah.
You're just a discontinued product.
Right.
Okay? So now, if you understand, they say, well, I said, well, look. I said, you know, people get paid to say nigga in America. You get people who get paychecks to say that.
Yeah.
Right? So he said, well, I said, yeah, you get comedians.
Yeah.
Rappers.
Yeah.
Actors.
Yeah.
Writers. They all get paychecks to say nigga in America.
Right.
But the only way that they can collect the paycheck is by harvesting a crop that was planted a long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay? So now, when you got all of these people running around saying nigga for free, they can then harvest that crop.
That's right.
And get paid.
Yeah.
But the ones running around saying it for free not getting paid. So that's a slave model.
Right.
They're generating profits for the masters. They're recouping their investments. They keep on doing. So now we have all of these Spanish speaking people. They're niggas now. The Chinese boys, they're niggas now.
Hey.
The white boys running around, they're niggas now. The little girls, they're niggas now.
I had to almost hold Queen Anika back. We were driving downtown, and I believe they're Southeast Asian folks. I'm not exactly sure from which group they belong. But we were driving past, and there was a bunch of women in the car. And one of their friends, another Southeast Asian young man, came up to the car and startled them. And she said, F this nigga. And we were literally just about a foot apart because it was in traffic. And I had to tell Anika, jumping out the car and beating up these ladies is not helpful. And I know she's a priestess and a queen, so she wasn't really gonna do it. But I can't say that thought didn't cross her mind. So really, we have to get.
I'm more worried about that African.
Yeah.
It's more dangerous to use the word nigga and all of us calling ourselves niggas than to call ourselves Africans. That's what I'm more concerned about.
Well, but I believe that what Brother Larry is saying here is he's saying we have to actually have group movements and come to decisions as a group, and we haven't necessarily made a decision on that as a group. I hear you.
See these two fingers? Yeah. Let me show you something, right? Were we to convene a conference, a national conference. See, we talk about black nationalism, but we never think about the one key element of nationalism, the name.
Black.
See, no, the name. If it's nationalism, it's representing a name. So now, if we're known internationally as niggas, and our kids are running around here, our teenagers, our young adults, some of our old people running around here calling themselves niggas, all in front of white people. They don't give a shit. They just niggas it up, right? All in the music, right? So now the Spanish-speaking people, it is a part of their cultural vocabulary now. They are niggas in America. People got mad at me when that white lady, Rachel Dolezal, said she was black. They got mad at me because I said she is black in America, right? And they said, well, how you gonna say she's black in America? The same way you're black in America. How you gonna argue with me on Monday and tell me you not black? And then the white lady say she black, and then you gonna argue with me on Wednesday that the white lady can't be black. The same thing make you black, make her black. It's just a status.
The same argument I had with some of my students. I mentor young girls, and we had a discussion over the word nigger. And I said, well, I'm not going to judge you for using it. I'm going to ask you, why do you use it, and what does that mean to you? And they were like, well, you know, it's me trying to identify with my friends, and that's what we call each other. And I said, okay. There was a white woman in the room. I said, well, she's your friend, right? And they were like, well, yeah. I said, is it okay if she calls you a nigger? And they got a little uncomfortable. And I said, why are you uncomfortable about it? I said, she's your friend, right? And they were like, well, yeah, so why can't she call you the same word? It's not the same thing. Why? And she couldn't articulate it. And I was like, because there is a negative connotation to that word, and it came from that same individual that's sitting right next to you, and she's the only one that makes you uncomfortable using it. So, but the fact that there is discomfort around the word means that you need to think about it. You need to do something about it.
Here's what I want to observe, right? A lot of our youth. You got this camera in my face?
Yeah. Not sure you want to say it on 125th?
No, I'm absolutely sure I want to say it. A lot of our youth are full of shit, right? Because they run around here calling themselves nigga all day, and when they with their white friends, they call themselves nigga, and their white friends call them nigga, and they call a white boy nigga too, right? I see it, I hear it, I address it,
I hear it too.
right? I make videos, sister. There were no niggas in my village, right? And I make songs singing about it, right? Now, I engaged these brothers. Brothers came from Detroit and debated me on camera that they were niggas. Tried to show me some nonsense, some fake ancient, some fake niggas. No, I tore a polite ass up about that shit out here.
He was
right?
doing it too?
He tried to do that shit to me, right? So I said, look, my point is this. It's a simple point, right? Very simple point. I live on a planet full of killers. Everything on planet Earth is trying to kill something and eat it. Or stock it, store it, to eat it later. Right? Now, that's planet Earth. Everything. From the tiniest bug to the biggest animal. It's looking for something to eat. And it's not going to be friendly when it finds it. We find ourselves in an unnatural, artificially constructed environment. And our understanding of the real world has been artificially constructed in this artificial environment. So this is real for us. The projects is real. They kill you over the projects. They'll kill you over being on my block. So it is actual, it has become their reality. So what we need to do, and what we have not done, is we have not taken control of our own narrative and our own direction. We ran to different places in America, and from the beginning, whether it was with French or Spanish or English or Dutch or Germans or whatever, right? We just scattered. And we've never formed a plan to like secretly meet and say, okay, we're gonna have a base. And all of our activity gonna be coordinated from that base. We haven't done that because we're not thinking like a strategically trapped people. We're still thinking like groups of people that were brought here at different times, that undergone similar situations and still undergo similar situations. But you know, not all black people in America are oppressed. Not all black people in America were enslaved. Some black people in America had slaves. Their descendants are still here, walking around, you and me. They not telling you, hey, well, my family wasn't enslaved. We actually owned a few of you. They're not going to tell you that because they don't want you to look at them differently. And you know we will start doing that. So we find out, oh, he's a descendant of a slave owner. What? What they did to Ben Affleck when they found out his ancestors owned slaves. And Henry Gates tried to hide it. Why would he try to hide it? Because of the way he think people would look at him today as a descendant of slave owners. Okay? Because there's a reason. There's a reason. Look, there's a reason why y'all can go anywhere y'all want in the world. Right? Say you taking 40 million black people with you and you become a threat because now you are an economic threat to somebody. We still in the market. They still trying to exploit us. This is all still about investment.
But my
Profit loss.
I'm not sure if I wouldn't say I disagree with you, but I do think that perhaps the angle you're taking on it could be a bit misleading. I think that we have to recognize that there is certainly a global white supremacy system that was structured to benefit powerful, landed, wealthy Europeans. And that the overwhelming majority of Europeans worldwide do not have the same benefit. That is true. I think that one of the ways to look at it, though, is in order for that system to continue, those powerful Europeans afforded some benefits to those average working class whites. Now, if they only recognize that their share of the pie is so small, and in some ways it's not significantly that much larger than the share that the other people of color have on the world, we would unify and decide to actually tear down these structures of political and economic hegemony. But
in the wall.
Yes, so there's actually they are misled in understanding their role. Dave Chappelle says you were part of the heist, you just don't agree on your cut. And so that's real. That's real. But I do want to say that we don't have a similar effect within the community of African descent, because even powerful Africans are still under the heavy burden of racial inequality in the United States. That doesn't mean that their lives are the same, or you and I. Anika and I went to one of the schools that's considered one of the strongest universities in the world, Cornell University. So we actually know some black folk, some Africans who are very wealthy. I'm gonna tell you that one of my fraternity brothers is the second wealthiest African American in the United States. But if he and I were walking through Harlem, in some ways, his chances of having his life ended due to racist animus is the same as mine. The lives of Europeans don't exist that way. And so there's a structure that was put in place by powerful whites, yes. And in addition to that, there's also a structure that keeps the Tom who are less powerful, watch your foot here, who are less powerful, somebody's going to trip over that tripod, who are less powerful in their stratified position as well. But I do think that one of the things that we have to do is we as Africans are going to first have to unite, because those powerful Europeans are uniting primarily because they want the resources of the places that are our birthright. That's another reason why we have to get to the point where we understand that we are African, we are involved in the affairs of our homeland, and that we are unifying on a global African basis. Because, let's say that we even just want to look at it from a practical purpose. Africa is the most opulent landmass on the planet. Forsaking that, I know this is not disagreement, but I'm saying that's why we have to ally with those people first.
However, how many countries on the continent of Africa?
I believe there are over 53 right now.
How many countries on the continent of Africa with Africa in their name?
With Africa in their name? Well, why would they need to have Africa in their name?
Trust me.
At this point, there's just one, I believe. Which one? There's South Africa, there's... Oh, that's true. That's right. Yeah.
Now, my point is, like, going back to the top, we've never convened to determine who we are going to be moving forward, right? I'm not averse to making Africa the national name, but it's not the national name, okay? We don't say African nationalism. We say black nationalism.
Well, I've always said I'm a Pan-African nationalist.
What I'm saying is Pan-Africanism was born in the diaspora. Pan-Africanism don't come from Africa. Kwame Nkrumah took it there.
I don't think that's true. I think that we're less familiar with those movements that took place on the continent than we are with those movements that took place outside of the continent, simply because of our positioning. I don't think that's necessarily true. But I do think, I'm agree with something you said a while ago. I do think that the position of Africans in the United States, because our specific allegiance to particular ethnic groups was fractured due to our enslavement, we see ourselves perhaps as what some folks would call the new African. You remember the new African movement for reparations, that in some ways we're the new African, that we don't necessarily have allegiances to particular nations, to particular ethnic groups. In some ways, brothers and sisters, I believe that this entire movement that has taken place over the last 500 to 700 years may actually posit a great need for those diasporan Africans. Because we don't see ourselves as clearly connected to a particular ethnic group, we probably will play a role, a very critical role, in the unification of our people worldwide and even our people on the continent. And that is going to be really interesting to see that. Because I think that it's only the diasporan African that will go to Africa and say, yes, I'm Brother Jabari. You will see. How you doing, sis? Good to see you. We will actually see that the diasporan African will return and say, we must unify. I don't care which group you're part of. We must unify. Yeah, and Anika and I have tried our best to travel on the continent so that we're able to actually become involved with the affairs of Africa. And we have to get to that point. Here's a quick anecdote. Some of you know that I lecture, and I've been doing quite a bit of study. Some of the things I do sometimes, I have DVDs of my lectures, right? So here I am rushing. I have a lecture to do. I have no time for someone else to do my DVDs. I said, I'm going to make my own DVDs. So I'm looking for the place that sells the DVD cases. I go to a warehouse in Brooklyn. Warehouse is large. And they have these large trucks moving in and out. And finally, my order was wrong, and I said, let me see the manager. So they said, well, I'm the manager, but the owner is here. Why don't you speak to the owner? So I'm looking for the owner, and this little guy that couldn't have been older than 27 or 28 comes and says, I'm the owner. So we conclude our business amicably, and I said, tell me something. Are you 30? He said, no, not yet. I said, how does someone that's not 30 manage this multi-million-dollar business? And he says, I was born in Brooklyn, but I have an uncle in China. We have to get to the point where we recognize that we must be involved in the affairs of our continent, because they will enrich us, they will educate us, and they will empower us. If we don't look at it that way, we don't understand that the African continent is more opulent than China. The African continent is more opulent than India. The African continent is much more opulent than Europe, which basically really doesn't have any resources to speak of. That's why they keep leaving. We have to get to the point where we say it is time for us, African, to unify and to use our resources to once again hoist us towards the forefront of human civilization. So that's where I'm going. I know you don't disagree with that.
You're a good brother.
I know you don't disagree with that.
Not only do I not disagree with it,
yeah,
right? Not only do I not disagree with it, but my problem is that, you know what? I was talking to some brothers from Senegal, right? Speaking of which, they probably wait for me to come
right
do
now,
some
right?
work for them, right?
Like, where's that brother?
Right? So, my question to them was, have you ever heard of anybody from Senegal being arrested for espionage? Right?
That's such a strange question.
They looked at me like,
for what?
Brother. I said, no, understand. Has there ever been like a Senegalese secret agent trying to steal nuclear secrets to go back to Senegal and make a damn atomic weapon or some shit? You understand? Yes. I said, now, we got armies on the continent of Africa.
Yes.
Where they get their weapons from? Woo. You understand? Because I know them white folks in South Africa was making their own.
Yeah.
And I know the Israelis was making their own.
The United States government still doesn't even acknowledge that that
Israel has nuclear weapons,
nuclear power.
Right?
Everyone in the world knows it.
My thing is that, look, when we see people from the continent of Africa here, amongst us. You could be selling CDs. The brother from the continent of Africa gonna come sell CDs too. He gonna sell them cheaper than you. He gonna compete with you, right? So I mean, they buying guns. Why they ain't making them? If we can make guns, no. But what I'm saying is, the Japanese got American technology and reverse engineered it.
Yeah.
And then mastered it.
Yeah.
And shrunk it.
Yeah.
And then sold it to the world.
Yeah.
Hi guys.
See, the Japanese realized that because of their constitution, due to World War II, they could no longer be aggressors. And instead of saying we're going to find a way to be aggressors, they said, okay, according to our compact, we have to also agree that the United States will protect us. We're going to use our resources to become an economic juggernaut, and that's exactly what they did. And they're now on the cusp. Family, I don't know if you know this, but this is why Brother Sa Netta is doing powerful stuff, because there was a point in Harlem's history where scholars, where teachers would come on the corner and actually tell our people what was going on in the world, right? On Speaker's Corner, 135th Street, right where Schaumburg is. And I think that we have to recognize that that powerful thing has to occur once more. So I'm going to talk about something that's happening right now. Some of you may not know that Japan could not be an aggressor. Some of you may not know that Japan does not have those weapons. And doesn't have those weapons. And doesn't have those weapons. You know Shaka go and bother me, right? And doesn't have those weapons because of its constitution. And what happened in World War II. But you better understand that in 2017, their president, Shinzo Abe, is trying to change their constitution. One of the things they can't have, by the way, family, is they can't have aircraft carriers, because aircraft carriers are used primarily for aggression. So what did they do? They built aircraft carriers and called them helicopter support vessels. Brothers and sisters, there are groups of people on the world. By the way, if you haven't done this, why don't you, right while you're watching this video, Google a world map and look for Japan, and look at how small that space is. And think about how they have actually become an economic juggernaut from that very tiny landmass. And then you look, and used to be an empire. Enslaved, and just look at the history of China. China, with this large landmass and that absolutely astronomical numbering of people, they were enslaved by the Japanese. And what have Africans done in recent history? We have to recognize that it's time for us to begin to throw our weight around, and we can't do that if we're not clear about who we are. So we got to start on a small level. You know, I'm looking for my uncle that owns a DVD shop in Nigeria someplace. We need to decide right now how I think that what Japan did is probably instructive. I think that building an army at this point, and we could discuss this part because it's not a final position, but I think building an army at this point might not get us to where we're looking to go. We have to become an economic political juggernaut. And when we become an economic political juggernaut, the army will follow.
Well, you know, that's the debate that W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington had.
That's right.
It's the same.
Really
this is the same debate.
It really is.
Right. So now, but I don't necessarily mean a militarily armed and trained army. I mean an army psychology. An army strategic thought process, because that's what the Japanese did. They turned their cultural cohesion into economics. And instead of becoming samurais, they became business samurais. No, so they use their culture in that way. Right? And
hold on to your man.
right now,
Brother Jabari, I'm telling Dr. Anika, you better hold on to him. He's been walking by looking at you like.
Somebody was looking at me, you didn't tell me.
She walked all the way over there, look back.
Said a sister was looking at me with my sister right here, and Sa's supposed to at least peep to me and say, look at the sister. He started trouble. But you know, what you're saying is powerful, because you're talking about an army based on cultural cohesion. That's powerful. That's powerful.
Right now, because
you need to get in on this, because I'm enjoying this too, you know. I'm enjoying this, brother.
If we're to be truthful, right?
You know what I ate last night?
Right now,
That's my whole point.
Our culture,
said hamburgers just because it would have been funny.
our culture, it
been funny.
it has been weaponized against us,
Yeah.
right?
So-
And
Jabari.
in the weaponization,
Bumping heads, so.
right? It's extremely profitable. This is how you got Biggie beefing with Tupac. That was profitable. Okay? This is why you got people.
Right.
It's again. We're in a market. We never left. They brought us to a market.
That's right.
And the original intent didn't work out.
That's right.
So they started trying to come up with what you call it?
strategy.
No. Derivatives.
Oh.
Okay. So now,
Has the Black News 102 the family even are they even familiar with derivatives? Y'all listen, if y'all ain't familiar with what's happening in the global economic environment right now, how this Tom Who has actually multiplied wealth without multiplying the resources. Derivatives are amazing.
well, that's what they do to our culture.
I mean, listen.
So now it started. It started with our blues and jazz musicians, right? It went on to our bebop musicians, our rock and roll musicians,
That's right.
right? R&B musicians,
That's right.
hip hop musicians.
That's right.
You understand? This is exploitation of our culture, the weaponization of our culture. And when you listen to the actual lyrics, right? They're talking about us killing us. And they're entertaining white audiences, global white audiences, talking about us killing us.
Right.
We're not talking about revolution.
Right.
We're not talking about overthrowing the system
That's right.
in the popular music. We're talking about fuck you nigga,
Right.
this nigga, that nigga,
Right.
and the popular music. So the
We ain't
popular
talking about revolution because the system appeals to
no, but no, what I'm saying, what
like the system.
what I'm
You
saying,
riding around-
what I'm
This is the African Horatio Alger myth because we all believe that there's a chance that we're going to hit it. There's a chance we're going to hit that number. There's a chance I'm going to get that job. There's a chance, and then all of a sudden my financial situation is going to change. And in actuality, for most people, it isn't.
I don't Shaka. I don't mean to suggest that our youth want to. I don't mean to suggest that our youth want to overthrow the system, right? I don't mean to suggest that our youth aren't enamored of the system. The system is designed to make them enamored of it.
Yes,
This is the images that they flash in your mind, the shiny shit. Yeah, it's everybody, but look, watch how this works, Jabari.
Gucci Man ain't rapping about
No, but watch how this works, right? Watch how this works. I'm only concerned with our folks, right? When I make the references, right? Yes, it includes the white folks, right? Because they ass trapped here too,
That's right.
right? I said earlier that there are millions of poor white people in America,
That's right.
right?
Give a fuck
That
about you.
no. There are millions of poor white people in America that the rich white people in America don't give a fuck about.
Right.
But I'm not concerned with them because as a mechanism of their control structure, right? They have structured those white people around us and make them think that they are a part of the system so that they operate as a buffer between us and the motherfuckers in power.
There's a chapter. He's saying the same thing. There's a chapter in my book that goes into this, and this is actually how enslavement was changed, was altered, so that it became about race. Because in actuality, if you look at what the powerful Tom Who planters were saying about people of African descent in the beginning, they were actually saying that Africans were organized, Africans actually had skills, and they said the dirty people are the Irish. But they realized that guess what happened? Those Africans who were not quite enslaved at this time but were more indentured servants actually allied themselves with poor whites, and there were a series of insurrections that were multiracial, multi-ethnic. Family, if you want to know more about it, it's in my book, but look up Bacon's Rebellion. That's one of the best ways to look at it. It's after that, it's not commonly known by us. But then after after that, the laws change, and they change so that that enslavement and stratification is seen racially, and that's so that even poor whites actually are active against their own
You know what the
interests.
remnants of that is today? You know what the remnants of that is today? Gerrymandering. That's the remnants of that. Or that racial stratification. That's why the Republicans are controlling the goddamn country right now. That's actually the South that's controlling the country. This is that strategy that was enacted. No, I'm good. That was enacted. That's the strategy that was enacted in 1877 with the Compromise.
Right. The Hayes-Tilden Compromise.
Yeah. We're not fighting, bruh, because a lot of us don't have no idea what happened to us.
That's right. That's right. You know, I could rock with you all day, right? This conversation, y'all lucky Black News 102 family, because if this brother was in my house, we'd just be on the couch, you know what I mean, drinking a green juice, you know what I mean, watching news, say, what's going on there? This is an interesting conversation, and it's happening on the streets of Harlem on 125th Street. This is powerful. This hasn't happened for 30, 40 years, that people will have conversations about some of the critical issues facing our people in public so our people can all partake in the dialogue. When I was a younger man and really coming in conscious in the late 80s and 90s, you know, there were places to go. There was UAM was doing amazing things at the Slave Theater. There was First World, but you had to know, right? You weren't going to just walk by and see it. That period where black folk discussed these critical issues on the corner had gone. And so now to have this come back to Harlem is powerful. So I'm just excited.
Cut this so we
Yeah.
can see what you got to do before.
That's right. That's right. Sound good. Sound good. Hey, brother.
Larry, close out. Let Larry close out real quick.
It was a pleasure meeting this brother today. Right? I got to take a picture of him and throw it up on my
Let me say
Facebook
this real
page.
quick. Brother Larry, actually, this is one of the first brothers that I seen you actually build with and not get into a debate with, because I seen Shaka coming in. I already see where that energy was taking you. But what y'all was doing, I think the people gonna really enjoy this right here.
Yeah.
You already know, brother, right? That if you're stupid, I'm just gonna tell you that you're stupid.
Not gonna spend much time trying to convince you.
Y'all mad at me for that, right? But that's just realismism, right? The brother's intelligent. The brother's articulate. The brother understands, right? You don't have to agree with everything a person says to have an agreeable conversation.
Yes.
Now, they'll say, well, what about you and Sutek? Sutek was just playing a puppet for the sign of the stage. So when Sutek see this down in Georgia on the plantation where he's at right now, in the cucumber patch, in the tomato fields, with them whip marks on his back. Just remember that, Sutek. We got love for you in New York.
He threw some betterment and then walked away. He dropped the mic like Chris Rock. Boom.
Let's get into it.